strategic plan to take us through to 2030, a vision we are calling a future full of bicycles, as you heard. As Kendra said, I'm Cynthia Rose, current chair of the Cal Bike Board of Directors and a local director of Santa Monica Spoke in my own hometown. I have been honored to serve alongside my colleagues on the Cal Bike Board, past and present, for 13 years. During that time and over the course of Cal Bike's over 30-year history, we've accomplished a lot alongside our supporters and members, all of you. So in 2024, Cal Bike celebrated its 30th anniversary. If we hold for a moment and think back to 1994, there were no protected bike lanes. The lanes we did have were narrow and in the door zone. And importantly, there was no dedicated funding for bicycle and pedestrian projects in California. Since then, CalBike has worked diligently to move the needle on these and other bike and active mobility issues. We won passage of the 3 foot to pass and changed lanes to pass laws, established protected bikeway, a major improvement over simple painted lines, passed the Freedom to Walk Act, which decriminalized jaywalking, and worked to win dedicated funding for safer streets for people biking and walking through the establishment of the Active Transportation Program, the ATP. We won statewide e-bike incentives recently, which delivered bikes to 2,000 low-income Californians. These wins come with a constant effort and dedicated work to defend our progress and to expand and make funding of these programs permanent and to increase access to it to all of our diverse communities in California. While our headline news is the laws we help pass and the funding we help to win, CalBike's always working behind the scenes to help build momentum and maintain the movement forward of a future full of bicycles across California. From lobbying legislators to our local working meetings with advocates and partners across the state to helping fledgling bike organizations build capacity through fiscal sponsorship. CalBike is steadfast in our support of the folks who make bicycling safer and more joyful in their communities because we believe all bicycling is local. So, on behalf of all of us here at CalBike, we are very excited to share how we plan to build on our momentum over the next 4 years. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Kendra to dig in.
Great. Thank you so much, Cynthia. And I just wanted to give a special thanks to the rest of our current board of directors. There are several folks who've, you know, cycled off the board who participated in helping with this current strategic plan as well. So definitely appreciate all their work. And I'm going to just quickly do a little switcheroo here to make sure we can just see everything well while sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. The slides disappeared. Just tried to move them. Andrew, do you have the slides up? Are you able to share?
Yes, let me get.
And we do have our board, some of our board. I see Cindy in here. She's vice chair from Bakersfield.
Hello.
Hi.
Awesome.
And Kathy Keehan from San Diego. I see her there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Hello.
Great. All right. So we have a little bit of the process to get to our strategic plan that we'll be talking about today. The board met several times over the past a little bit more than a year, having, all day workshops to work on the strategic plan. As you often do, we started with the prior plan. We sort of took it apart, thought about, does it meet the needs of the movement for today? We expanded it, we refreshed. We talked to partners along the way, not specifically about the plan per se, but about the work and how to make it more meaningful, more impactful, how we can better support the movement, support our partner organizations, and get more work done in the Capitol and beyond. At the same time, our staff met frequently, as we tend to do when we're working, but also about the strategic plan, taking what the board had worked on in the broad strokes, as the board does, to provide strategic direction, and bring it into the day-to-day of what would this look like for our work plan, and how would we operationalize this. And so through that, we came to a strategic plan that we're calling A Future Full of Bicycles. And this will guide our work through 2030, providing a path through uncertain times towards a future full of bicycles. So, just wanted to restate our mission statement. CalBike advocates for equitable, inclusive, and prosperous communities where bicycling helps to enable all Californians to lead healthy and joyful lives. Like to think that it's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. For an organization that's focused on, making sure that everyone can ride their bike to get safely from point A to point B. Next slide, please. And our vision, I'd like to say just about as simple, that we want to see everywhere in California be a healthy, safe, and just community where bicycling can be a big part of that, where everyone can enjoy the benefits of the bicycle. Next slide, please. Our values. Don't worry, I won't read this. Just kind of wanted to walk through all of the different parts of our strategic plan and sort of how they impact our day-to-day work, and how both the staff and the board of CalBike will really use this information. So our values really outline what comes together to make communities whole, and how we think about that in our work, because we do understand that the bicycle is not the only thing that's important to people in our communities. So we do see it as a key contributor to what makes communities healthy and whole, but there are a lot of other components. So, we want any type of community in California, whatever the type of geography, to have a good quality of life, free of violence, free of poverty. We want folks to have access to affordable housing. We want them to have healthcare. We want there to be good public transit. We want folks to have open spaces to recreate and, provide a healthy environment. We want people who live in communities to have decision-making power in how their transportation and land use is used and changed and modified and built. And we recognize that the folks that see the most impact from these decisions are often not the ones who are involved in making those decisions, and we want to change that. And generally, we want everyone, no matter what their characteristics are, to have great facilities, great spaces to be, and great opportunities. And so, how this impacts our work is really that it helps inform who we work with in our coalition. We work with a lot of folks who don't have bicycle in their name on purpose, and it impacts the types of cross-cutting policy that we may contribute to. So this is how we use our values. Next slide, please. Similarly, we've had a statement on mobility justice for some time, and I talked about this a moment ago, but transportation, as well as land use, are key places where historically decisions have put disproportionate burdens on often Black and Brown communities, and those decisions have often placed disproportionate burdens, such as high incidence of injuries and fatalities on our roadways, lack of adequate facilities for folks to walk and bike safely, and lack of access to opportunities to help in the decision-making process about when new and better facilities are being built, lack of access to resources to build those facilities, and the list goes on. And so, CalBike, in our work, in our policy work, and in the work that we do in Coalition, we seek to undo that history and reframe how those decisions are made in any way we can. You see this through things such as decriminalizing jaywalking through the Freedom to Walk Act, which we contributed to several years ago, and other work. And so it is a big part of sort of the value system behind our work. Next slide, please. So a little bit about how CalBike operationalizes our mission. So the key body and what you might mostly hear about from CalBike is our legislative and administrative advocacy work. We work with many coalition partners to develop policies that are advanced as legislation or in administrative channels like places through Caltrans, like Caltrans. We have relationships with legislators, their staffs. We sponsor and co-sponsor bills. We support bills. We oppose bills. And then we also work with or either inside or outside with or sort of on the outside advocating towards agencies to get policies better adopted that may already be in place but may not be coming to fruition. So that's a big piece of our work. Budget advocacy also fits in here to get more funding for transportation facilities for people biking. Next slide, please. A large body of our work is through education. This is a lot of this is targeted towards people who make decisions. So legislators, their staff. We do a lot of educational content that is helpful for any level of decision maker, whether it's your local planning commissioner all the way up to city council, county supervisor, or your state elected official. Also to people who ride bikes, the general traveling public, to help advance that cultural shift towards seeing bicycling as a transportation mode, seeing bicyclists as people who have a right to the roadway, and as vulnerable road users who deserve protection. We serve on many committees and have many conversations as a thought leader on active transportation planning and design. And we work to do a lot of this work with the media as well. Our largest educational impact is through our California Bicycle Summit, which we just held about a month ago in Sacramento. We do move that throughout the state. We hold it every 2 years, and it is one of the leading conferences on active transportation, bringing advocates, decision makers, local agency staff, private sector planners, academics, all together to talk about the latest and greatest in making bicycling and active transportation a reality throughout our state. Next slide, please. Movement building, I'd say, is the third key pillar of our work. One of the most important words in our work is coalition. We work as a convener for local and regional bike and bike walk organizations. We, through our 501c3 organization, the California Mobility Fund, we incubate sort of startup organizations through fiscal sponsorship and technical assistance in organizational administration. And really, I'd say the biggest piece of this is working with other advocates who do policy work and having sort of roundtable discussions frequently, and just serving as a partner in thinking about policy work. And we really appreciate and are thankful for this opportunity to do the work alongside all of our partners throughout the state. Next slide, please. So without further ado, strategic priorities in the strategic plan. And I am really getting into the nuts and bolts here. There's a little bit more meat in the full document, which will be on our website. But just wanted to kind of dig in, and then we can have a discussion in a little bit. So next slide, please. So first off, we want to see a built environment where biking and walking are safe and accessible choices in all communities. You might wonder, your CalBike, why do you put walking in some of your priorities? Well, everyone's a pedestrian every day. If things are safe for people walking, they're probably going to be a little bit safer for people bicycling as well. So we sort of see that as a twin goal, or as a twin priority. And so we have a lot of goals under this priority around how infrastructure should be focused and targeted, who should be prioritized, and our work will operationalize the types of policies and strategies where we think this could be most critically advanced over the next 4 years. Next slide, please. So priority 2, secure long-term active transportation funding to support the mode shift required to meet California's climate goals. This is always a critical piece. CalBike, as Cynthia mentioned, has been instrumental in a number of different funding programs in California for active transportation, from the bicycle transportation account to the active transportation program, to SB1, which infused a lot more money into the active transportation program. And then, to now, when we are consistently working with partners to defend funding for the active transportation program every year, getting money to, right size the investment in facilities for people to bike and walk is critical. And in a state that sort of touts its climate goals and needing to meet the moment for climate change, investing in active transportation is critical, and framing that in a climate change lens really sort of marries our goal with some of the reasons behind why it's important, and also why the state should be investing in these facilities as well. And so really funding is a critical piece. We are nowhere near we need to be in terms of how many facilities, how much coverage we have in our communities for people biking, and we can use a lot more funding. Next slide, please. Our third priority, strengthen the power of the active transportation movement in California. So as I mentioned here, we are lucky to work with local and regional advocates and other statewide advocates throughout California. We will continue to do so. We'd like to strengthen that work through a number of different means. We are, actively working with some industry partners, other aligned advocates, staff in different state agencies, and policymakers to advocate for safe streets. We want to expand that work. And we also want to keep working with our supporters, so the people that financially support CalBike, and help leverage them into our work. How we do that now is primarily from our, extensive use of sort of the policy campaigns, getting folks to sign onto petitions and get their legislators, email and call their legislators. Continue to do that, but really making the opportunity for folks to contribute to the movement by contributing their voice. Next slide, please. So priority 4, electing bike champions to public office and working in partnership with them to create a policy landscape that prioritizes bicycling. Very appropriate for today, a week before, or less than a week before, the primary election. CalBike has a history of doing endorsements for statewide races. We do maintain strong relationships with many elected bike champions who we work with to advance legislation. We work to ensure that they maintain that priority for active transportation, and work with us. We hope to work with these people for years to come on good policy for bicycling. Alongside that, we maintain an energized supporter list. We hope to, keep those folks energized, to keep the pressure on their decision makers to make good decisions. And we'd also like to expand our available resources to the decision makers specifically to support bike-friendly decision making. Recently we've worked with partners to host 3 lobby days over the past few months of different sizes, and really expanding on our ability to reach legislators and give them resources directly to make better decisions around bicycling. Next slide, please. Last but not least, this is sort of our internal goal, strengthen CalBike. It's, maybe this is always the case, but it has been an uncertain time for nonprofit organizations across the board. CalBike is not immune to that. So we have, a number of internal goals around sort of financial sustainability, revenue, and making sure our staff are supported and maintained for the long term. So that's sort of our internal goal to wrap things up. And I believe I am handing it over to Andrew for something exciting.
I think Kevin's up first.
Nope.
No. Mm,
A future full of bicycles looks like
Here's my future full of
Future
bicycles.
full of bikes to me.
The future full of bicycles begins.
It's where anyone who wants to, young or old, feels like riding their bike is the regular choice.
it means breathing cleaner air. It means streets that don't feel like something will survive.
Not anything fancy, just the cleanest, healthiest, most joyful way to move around the world.
A bicycle is one of the most affordable ways to get around, and we spent decades building a world that makes it feel impossible to choose one. At CalBike, we're trying to change that.
And the most important word in our name, as I often say, is coalition. And I see the coalition every day. The coalition is the Cal State student free from a car loan. It's the downtown San Diego restaurant worker riding home on a hybrid bike in the dark. It's the Berkeley parent carrying groceries on an e-cargo bike. The Larchmont neighbor reaching transit on bike share. The Sacramento older adult riding again on a bike that had been in the garage for a decade. The Nevada City bike bus joyfully pedaling into school. The coalition is how we are going to move California forward. And for more than 30 years, CalBike has brought that coalition into the Capitol, into state agencies, and into the fight for safer streets, lasting funding, and a transportation system built around people. A future full of bicycles is not something we can wait for. It's something we are building together as a coalition.
All right, Kevin.
Thanks all. Well, as you heard in the video there, Andrew mentioned how important the coalition is. I see quite a few familiar names, some of our longtime devoted and generous supporters on the call with us today. First, want to say thanks so much to you all. Your support these last few years has truly helped to power our progress. For those of you who may not be active members with CalBike, do hope you'll consider becoming a member today. As you heard on the video, we are truly strongest and best positioned to move this work forward and build California's future full of bicycles when we have a strong coalition behind us. So a gift of any amount will go a long way. You can choose to give to our 501c4, support our advocacy via the California Bicycle Coalition. You might choose to support our education and outreach via our 501c3, the California Mobility Fund. We have a variety of ways that you can support CalBike and our work. You could participate in a charitable hiking or biking event, donate via your donor advised fund, donate your old car, become a monthly member. To learn about any of that or to make your gift today, you can just head over to calbike.org/join, and we'd be so grateful to have you as a part of the California Bicycle Coalition. And with that, I believe we are passing it back to Kendra for a little Q&A.
That's right. We wanted to save plenty of time for conversation. I'm happy to dig in anywhere. I think we have a link. The plan is already up on our website, so we can drop that link in. Not that you want to read it all right now, but happy to get back into anything. But yeah, if you are able to do a hand raise so we can keep things orderly, but we did this in meeting mode, so we can just have people unmute and go from there. I see Stephen. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. I don't know how many Stevens there are, but am I the one?
I met you,
I'm-
Stephen Bingham. Thank you so much.
Good. Yeah, I'm Steve from San Rafael, and I like what the whole presentation. It's very straightforward. In some ways, I'd like to see a little bit of thinking outside the box. And I'm going to suggest two things that are controversial and would love to see reaction to it. One of the things that we faced here in San Rafael when the local Marin County Bike Coalition successfully got an extra lane on the Richmond Bridge was an unbelievable pushback from many, many people in the community. And the problem is that not many people are using that lane. There was a lot of misinformation about its impact on traffic and so forth. But I do think, given that funds are scarce, it's exceptionally important to do polling or some kind of priority or strategic thinking ahead of time about volume of bicyclists that are going to use new and improved infrastructure. So that's one thing to just put on the table. The other, even more controversial, is I'm very frustrated with the substantial number of bicyclists. It's a minority, but it's significant, that are scholars. And one of the results of that phenomenon is a level of anger among a certain part of the population towards cyclists that is unacceptable. We all know of cases where people in motor vehicles have intentionally run over cyclists, and part of that comes from that. I spend a good bit of time in Paris, which has many more bicycles than any city I know of in California, except maybe San Francisco. I have almost been killed 2 or 3 times by bicyclists. So it's not just a US phenomenon. I have always been told by bike advocacy groups, oh, that's off limits. That's blaming the victim. And we will not go there in terms of any work that we do. And I find that very, very unfortunate. Thank you.
Yeah. I appreciate that. They're really good ideas. Okay, I'm going to go to Jeffrey Parker.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. I'm up in
Yes.
Mendocino County, and wanted to ask what I really appreciate the great work that's been done over these years on this plan and vision. But in the last 6 weeks, we've been struck by a sort of a timeliness factor that probably is greater than anything we've seen since the oil shocks of the 70s. And I'm curious whether or not you've maybe thought about putting together, a kind of almost an emergency group to look at ways to exploit the seriousness of this new energy crisis and the potential for utilizing this to raise awareness of the importance of alternatives to fossil fuel transport. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate that. Definitely use that messaging and conversations at the Capitol the last couple of weeks. We'll have to think about that for some of our communications. Appreciate that. Have McCoy Cantwell next.
Hi there. Well, actually, first, in connection to what Jeffrey was saying, kind of a big sticking point related to, current gas crisis is the inflection point for the Netherlands was the gas crisis back in the 70s, and that they were all in on car-centric infrastructure really until then, and then they just made that pivot. So that should be inspiring. But besides that, I'm down in LA County, and a lot of the projects, very big county, a lot of the projects that are most exciting, or at least to me, seem like are going to drive a lot of the adoption are those completely separated off-road trails that right now are somewhat lacking connectivity. I know that that is really a Southern California specific strategy, but there are a good handful of riverfront bike trails that right now kind of just end. And if we can really focus on making that into a solid network, I think that would go very
Mhm.
far and makes for a very strong trunk off of which cities can adopt their own. Because I know getting cities to play together is is not the easiest job, but if you can get the trunks built, that would make it easier altogether.
Mhm. Thanks. And I've seen a few, I'm going to open up the chat. I see a few people putting things in there, so I'm going to go over to that real quick. All right. Have a comment from Jessica Large. I'm surprised to not see bike education as a priority on the plan. With the number of youth using e-bikes, there's a major need for more education. I totally appreciate that comment. Cowbike itself doesn't do bike education, which is why you don't see it as a large component of our what we're going to do ourselves. We are supportive of it as a policy idea. I know we have been engaged with some other, like a coalition of folks that are moving that forward at the state level. Um, and I believe it does come into play. So we have our priorities and the goals under that you saw, and there are some sort of sub components, strategies, and that does come into play there. So it is, especially, yes, with youth using e-bikes, that is something that comes into play there. We just don't do bike education ourselves. Gene Samuels asks, has CalBike endorsed a candidate for governor? We have not. How we run our endorsements, we distribute questionnaires in districts that are deemed opportunity areas through a process that we conduct. And I'll just say, to be frank, getting a questionnaire back from governor candidates from our organization didn't seem like something that necessarily we're going to be able to accomplish. So we did not do that this cycle. Definitely, I think maybe a future goal. Let's see. Mike Swire, 25% of under 18-year-olds getting to school on bike. I'm guessing that's a goal, like something you'd like to see. I love that. Let's see. "25% reduction in deaths for people on bikes." Okay, I like that as well. I mean, I love the idea of vision zero. Okay. And then a follow-up question from Jessica. What is CalBike currently working on in regards to bike education? I'll mention again, and I'm gonna look. Okay, I think I lost the entire window that had my slides in it. There is a statewide collaborative, and I'm gonna get into my calendar. I believe it's called Walk Bike Roll California. And it is spearheaded by our friends at California Walks and some other organizations. And we are a member, and they're the primary folks working to advance a statewide bike ped education requirement in all schools. So we're a member and hope to do more to help that in the future. We have also been in a lot of conversations around e-bike education specifically, and some bills around that this year. So that's sort of our current involvement. But since we are a small statewide organization, we aren't actually involved in any in-person educational activities. Let's see. Someone interrupt me if there's another in-person hand up of someone wanting to speak, but I'm just going to go through some of these questions in the chat because I know some folks can't unmute. Bruce asks, what intersections does CalBike have with trail access advocacy organizations for off-road biking, for example, lobbying state legislators to apply pressure to state parks to build or open, more multi-use trails. So we do have relationships with a couple of the organizations like California Mountain Bike, and there is another, and I'm forgetting their name at the moment, but we do have periodic conversations with a few of the trail-focused organizations. Rails to Trails is the national organization, and we do have a relationship with them as well. We primarily have been talking with them about some of the sort of access, kind of where our issues intersect, so sort of trail access, and obviously the ever-present e-bike issue. So where bicycling comes, where if things are legal or illegal on the road, are they legal or illegal on the trails, etc. But yeah, I think those are conversations that we have with them. And a few of those folks did come to our California Bicycle Summit, so there is some exchange of ideas.
Seeing a
Okay,
hand from
Mike's
Michael
oh
Brady.
yeah, okay, Michael, Brady, go ahead.
Hey, how are you? I apologize. I was in the waiting room hopper for probably 85% of the presentation, so I don't know if what I'm about to ask was covered there, but I wondered if there had been any consideration about a strategy that's sort of off legislative session to begin to educate specifically people within the Transportation and Appropriations Committees regarding some of the advocacy positions when we're not in defense mode trying to counter the introduction of a bill that is now passing through the legislative process. I mean, as you know, I wrote a letter to the Transportation Committee and the Assembly regarding one of the two bills that just got killed. But I thought probably a better plan or strategy, which is what I'm trying to do right now, is to see people when that process isn't in full swing and try to
Yeah.
educate from there. And so specifically my two representatives, Lisa Calderon in the Assembly is on appropriations, and Bob Archuleta in the Senate is on transportation. And I've already met with one of their legislative teams and have the other scheduled. And again, I look at this group of some 80 plus people, and I just wonder if we were to sort of list all the people that are in transportation in the House and or in the Assembly and the Senate, and then in appropriations, and figure out who amongst the cow bike community is in those districts to take the lead while when they're not in legislative session, to now start to kind of make the inroads with these people, such that when these things come back, when they're in legislative session, we've already done the pre-work as opposed to being in more of a react mode, trying to stop something that we don't agree with.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that that's something we work on every year. We aren't always successful in getting meetings with everyone, everyone we like. I think it would be definitely helpful. Just writing myself a note here. Having constituents who are able to make a request could definitely be an inroad where a legislator may not be as interested in meeting with an organization that isn't a constituent. So definitely something to think about in terms of, something we might be able to support with some materials.
Yeah,
that
and
sort
I'd
of
even
thing.
again
It's definitely an
suggest
idea.
perhaps
Yeah.
putting a fill out form on the Cow Bike website that allows us to go in and submit our names to you guys with what districts we're in, so that your team can then match up or do a one-to-one match. We got these people in transportation and we've got volunteers or people that are in the Cow Bike community that are in these districts, so that you guys can call upon us. Because
Yeah.
I think you're right. There are a lot of people on the teams that I've already approached. The first thing they ask is, are you a constituent? And they're
Right.
much more likely to see us than they are to see, as you suggested, an organization. And so if you have us matched up and you say, hey, I know Michael's in Bob Archuleta's and he's on transportation and said we need to dispatch him to go try to get with this guy, then we become a part of your strategy and your plan.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I really appreciate that idea, and knowing that that's something that folks might be willing to do. I know from time to time we've put different sort of volunteer opportunities, and I do see a question about this in the chat. We have made different volunteer opportunities available from time to time, and that could be something interesting to kind of check in about and make available when the legislative session isn't as in full swing. Um, awesome. Thanks for that idea. I'm going to call on Terrell.
Hi, everyone. Terrell Culloway with Marin County Bicycle Coalition. First of all, I just want to thank Cal Bikes for its leadership. I think, we were up against some huge challenges this year, and I think it's mostly due to your organizing that we helped kill some really bad bills and are on the way to hopefully passing some good ones. And that being said, kind of piggybacking on the last caller's suggestion, in Washington State, I used to work for an organization that started something they called the Environmental Priorities Coalition. And what they did was they got all of the environmental organizations together to decide what priorities they were going to go and lobby to Olympia on. And every year, the elected officials are wondering, okay, what are going to be the 4 priorities? And it really kind of cuts the noise for them. So they're able to, because there are hundreds of environmental organizations, they're able to really focus on uh, what they know that the whole community has chosen as their priorities. And I know you guys have your full plates, and I know, we have always, Jared last year got us to decide what our priorities were as a group, but it might be nice to have some kind of branding around it. Andrew, I'm looking at you. That says these are the alternative transportation communities or active transportation communities priorities for the year. And this is what we're going to be coming to you with, so that it is more proactive rather than reactive, kind of along the same lines as that last caller. I know that a lot of times we do have to just be reactive because there's a lot of bad bills that we weren't expecting. But the process has worked for the environmental community, and I know that it's been replicated in states throughout the country, starting in Washington. So just a suggestion.
Yeah. Thanks. And I will go to Charlene next, and then I'll go to a few more on the chat.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Charlene Liu, chair of Sunnyvale Safe Streets. I just had an idea regarding the elections endorsing candidates, specifically the governor for this round. I think it's very important to choose a good governor, and I think it would help if CalBike did endorse somebody, because there's a lot of people who respect what CalBike does. And so one way to make it easier for CalBike to figure out who to endorse is you don't necessarily need to send a questionnaire to all the candidates. I've seen other organizations research the top few candidates, and hopefully it's not too hard to figure out who the top few are. And then based on their voting record and other factors, you can deduce something. So yeah, so I think that's a maybe even more effective way to figure out who to endorse than to go off of answers to a questionnaire.
Yeah, thanks, Charlene. Appreciate it. Okay. So the next question I see in the chat, they spoke to a tiny bit, but from Christopher Warren, what can volunteers do for CalBike besides financial support? I know we've had a couple of opportunities quite recently to join lobby day activities. That is not typical. We do hope to have more opportunities like that in the future. Typically throughout the year, we send out a number of alerts both in our newsletter and in standalone emails to our supporters when there's opportunities to support different bills by calling, emailing, or calling or emailing primarily your legislator at specific important junctures. And that is kind of the primary thing that we do on a recurring basis. We've had some phone banking opportunities in the past. I do like the idea that folks have pointed out of, talking to legislators sort of outside of the session, just on some educational ideas. We've also had folks volunteer and join focus groups to discuss some of the policy priorities in the past to kind of give their opinion on them. Those are obviously not, we don't have a ton of those are not big group opportunities. We've typically had, pretty small groups do that to just kind of float some ideas in addition to talking to partners. Kevin, Andrew, am I missing any big things we've done in the past? We're definitely open when folks have, specific things they may have a skill set in.
I'm taking down names for my exciting phone banks. It really is. It's a lot of fun. You get engaged. You get to talk to other Calbec supporters. It's a good time, I promise.
Sounds like you both got it covered. Thank you.
Great. Let's see. Bruce asks, what metrics does Calbyte use to measure your success? How often do you consider these metrics? Great. Great question. So we have key performance indicators in kind of our full strategic plan that a lot of them align with sort of types of engagement we're doing. So, we're getting Caltrans leadership, for example, on a particular topic to sit down at a table and get certain types of commitments made on a certain clock, or getting a certain number of proposals on a certain topic out to legislators. Some of them are more around number of organizations that we're engaging. So getting diversifying the number of organizations we're working with, getting folks from sort of different geographies engaged that we're not currently working with, or different sort of subsets of the bicycling community. Some of our metrics are around how often we are sort of coordinating and sort of doing that capacity building that I'm talking about. So, for example, we work to gather the leadership of different bike and bike walk organizations. And we were able to do, one standalone meeting this year, and then one smaller sort of meetup at the California Bicycle Summit. So I'll call that sort of 1.5 meetings over this year. And so, depending on what the activity is, we have metrics. We're kind of working to make a lot of those indicators more, I'll just say more smart, more measurable, more time bound. Some of these, because they are some of the ones that are more, specific policy focused, clearly getting the policy passed, getting the policy, stage one, getting the policy even introduced at a legislative level, getting it, passed is the ultimate goal. And if you're in a year when that doesn't happen, you're back at step one. So some of those are, I'd say, a little bit squishier as a performance indicator, because not getting it passed doesn't mean you didn't do some work. Other, some of our communications areas have more specific, traditional, numeric key performance indicators, if that kind of answers that question. Jacob Bayless says, I'd like to suggest that a missing component is improved need for collaboration efforts with the fast-growing trail and natural surface stewardship community. We all love bikes. We should be joining forces more to talk and promote big picture routes in addition to built pave infrastructure. Great. Yeah, appreciate that. We are, I'm learning a lot about this from our, one of our organizations that we fiscally sponsor is the Motherlode Bike Coalition, and they are sort of a collaboration in a region that is, I'd say half, trail unpaved and half folks that do road. So, and a lot of folks do both. So definitely learning about kind of how that mixes, and always happy, looks like we have some of our mountain biking folks on this call. So always happy to see how we can work together. Okay. Cray Hampel, if I got that name correct, says, how about shifting driver's training to a wide view mobility training that would require proficiency in public transit, bus, train, cycling, some history of transportation planning, and impacts of driving. Love that idea. I think, we have a kind of, if we look back in the CalBike playbook from years past, we've had several attempts to expand what's included in driver's training. We've had some successful attempts at getting some additional bike curriculum in there. We've tried to get an entire separate bike manual. The truth of the matter is, there are a declining number of people that even take driver education. If you get a license after the age of 18, you are not required to take it. So, I think getting rules of the road and bike ped safety education to all kids in schools would make a huge difference in having a well-rounded safety education before people choose if they're going to become drivers or not. And then, understanding how to bike and walk would safely would in turn, if you become a driver, help you be more knowledgeable about how to do that safely around people biking and walking. But yes, definitely agree. And DMV has been a tough nut to crack legislatively, but we continue to try to work on that. I'm going to call on Nancy, who has her hand up.
Hi, Kendra. Thank you so much for sharing all of this valuable information. And I was just about to talk about that. Like, what would it take to be able to expand on a section dedicated for bicyclists and bicycle safety? I think that would be something good, but just figuring out how to crack that nut and then also how to push for that. I'm super interested in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the short answer is DMV has been in a very long multi-year modernization program that's taken a lot of resources. They've been basically saying no to any changes while that happens. Anything regarding printed material that gets changed has a backlog of multiple years because of how much print stock they have. And then anything at the legislative level that involves a cost, which any new print materials, right? Like anything that involves a cost right now with the budget the way it is kind of gets kicked back and doesn't pass this legislation. So it definitely isn't something that won't happen, but it's something that has just a ton of roadblocks at this point. And we were able historically to get questions about bicycling included in the driver test. I think getting additional material and getting a common language handbook or addition of information on safe bicycle operation is, kind of a goal, but getting there, I think, is challenging. And I will just say ditto that answer to Jeremiah Rohr's question about where does the push for the Idaho stop policy fit in this plan. I think that is something that has been a goal for CalBike for quite some time. We've been unsuccessful under the current governor 3 times. We have been sort of advised to wait it out. So I think we're sort of waiting it out at this point until we have potentially a new person there, and we'll see if we can find a champion in the legislature at that point. Let's see. We have 3 minutes left, so I'm just trying to get to the big questions here. best avenues to address our local MPOs, corresponding or lobbying our own board member, or are there strategies for getting active transportation topics in front of them? I would say, from personal experience, staff are your best friend. Staff can be your best friend. Being kind and curious with staff at an MPO, if you find someone that you think is sympathetic, is critical. I see a thumbs up from a staff member at an MPO. Yes. Because they, if they are a bicyclist or they believe that active transportation is important, they will alert you, or they might alert you when something important is coming up or when you might have an opportunity to make a difference. And they are the person that can maybe alert you when having an outside voice say, I believe that what staff is doing is important and I think we need to go further. So make friends with staff, support their work when they're doing good work. We don't always have to go to government agencies and say you're doing something wrong. We can also say when they're doing something right. And I know a lot of you are already doing that. Lots of other questions. There are some questions about our current stances on a couple of the DUI bills. Generally, I think these are all numbers of DUI bills. Generally speaking, this year we have been watching the DUI bills and not supporting or opposing them because it's just a lot going on this year with the bills we are active on. Not necessarily to say we don't believe that a lot of them are important. We just haven't had the bandwidth to take an active role on those. And I think we are at about time. I greatly appreciate the depth of questions folks asked. Keep them coming. If you want to engage on any of these issues, please go to our website. I know a link was dropped for the plan. We definitely love to talk more about any ideas or questions you have. All of our email addresses are firstname@calbike. We appreciate your partnership and your support. And here's to a future full of bicycles. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Thank you for the
Thank you.
meeting.
Have a good day.
Thank you.